Yes, it's really good to hear the sound of what is called the of the rain, and and hearing the sound of the of that rain. It makes one aware that something that we must learn to grapple with, because it falls from the sky and it hits the ground, the soil, then the water travels, and not to mention that when it hits the concrete, hits the ocean. It helps us to be able to grapple. We have to grapple, deal with what's going on. I don't know. Let's look at the word grapple within itself, and see what it says. To engage in a close fight or a struggle without weapons. Wrestle. Wrestle, the struggle. It is said that the task or the duty of the conscious by Kwame Ture is to make the unconscious aware of its unconscious behavior. Instinctively, people want freedom. Instinct. But we must not act instinctively, but act out of reason. That is a faculty that has been given to us, if I may use the word faculty, to be able to reason. I've said that we must learn to reason from the premise of conversation, and we need to learn to reason with progression. So when you reason with progression, you progress as opposed to regress. It's the struggle. That's the struggle. John Jackson said, what is a literary or civilized society but a literary society? And you must have scholars and scientists, he says. And then Brother Imam Muhammad talks about the struggle is nonsense versus common sense, But to be able to reason, as Kwame Ture says, not to teach them, but to make them conscious of their unconscious behavior, Once again, instinctively, they want freedom. You can't have, Malcolm X said, you can't have freedom without peace and peace without freedom. I mean, when you got peace, that we are not a threat to each other, And Kwame Ture talking about waging protracted war. And he says it's linked to mobilization and organization. And I realized that when in doubt of order, we need an incorrigible mobilizer in order that we may learn from our culture experiences. Culture is dynamic. Culture helps us find our burns. It is necessary but not sufficient. In addition to that, the Dr. Seymour talked about how culture is, if it's destructive, you have to take a very serious look at that culture. So you can tell the psychology of one's mentality by what he or she produces. So we're still talking about, the duty of the conscious is to make the unconscious, makes the unconscious unconscious of their behavior, an incorrigible mobilizer, you see. And then when in doubt of law, we need a knowledgeable organizer, or that we may learn from our historical experiences, which means to put things in a historical context. Yes. For the most part, people look for a model or a hero. And for the most times, people become burdened with myths, not maybe understanding in a competitive sense that sometimes you may have to create a mythological figure. Yes, due to the level of competition that ones have and is in and engage in one with another, just to distinguish, yourself or oneself. The confusion is the mobilizing the organizer. Well, some would say that Dr. King was a mobilizer and Malcolm was a organizer. He break down the walls of segregation, then he leave. Whereas Malcolm left Moss. He created some Moss. Since racism is institutionalized, this is institutional and judicially reinforced, legislatively as well. So it's necessary to develop, as some of the thinkers from a historical context understand the importance of intellectual intelligentsia, in the spirit of Frederick Douglass, in the spirit of W. Du Bois, in the spirit of Henry Herbert Harrison. Yes. In the spirit of Ida B. Wells, Yes. In the spirit of Harriet Tubman, who struck a blow to the economy of the South, So when you deal with the economy, you deal with what, if you want to take it to the streets, we should organize, seriously plan, and go to, because it's about economic inequality, and mass incarceration. And it's also deal with the deindustrialization, of America. Some will come to know, due to the cheap labor that is being brought about overseas. Break down or tear down one manufacturing company. People, lose their jobs, and we're here to be productive people as human beings, But yeah, so this duty of the conscious is to make the unconscious aware of their behavior, and not to be very instinct, I believe that separates humans from what people call animals, even though animals come from the word animated, you know. But the faculty, the ability to reason, you know, one with another, you know. To be able to um, use our faculties in the best of ways, you know. For patience can help us do that as well, you know, being patient, because you know patience put us in a position to become, you know, very competent in it. But it's something that you come into, you know, like you come into peace. For me, the ultimate aim is complete civility, you know, because you never know who's behind the scenes calling the shots, who is able to instigate and individuals or human beings to make them to respond very instinctively, you know, very emotional. It seems as though the people being more uh, logic, illogically driven, I should say, by their emotions, you know. Instead of logically driven, they're illogically driven. So you must find resolve when it comes to the balance of logic and emotion, you know. So when you deal with policy, policy effects can help bring about change. Then again, you know, it's all contingent upon one's consciousness. You know, you can't regulate morality. So it's about one's level of consciousness. You know, people know that they are been deprived of economic of accessibility to wealth, I should say. And people get into things and respond instinctively, and sometimes it's popular to do so, you know. Become lovers of publicity, and as one would say, and not lovers of humanity. You know, ultimate aim is, you know, just to come into complete civility, you know. Yes. But it's kind of difficult, really, unless you have come up and been raised with a clear purpose in mind, to not allow yourselves to be influenced and behave in a manner that is very highly emotional, you know, very instinctive, you know, in the manner and way in which even we engage in one another, and that becomes popular, you know. It seems as though one's emotional response or reaction becomes very popular. One's made the way in the manner one express him or herself becomes very very attractive, you know, very very popular. Yes, so there is much to be learned when it comes to one trying to come into complete civility. Complete civility. And the duty of the conscious as well is to make the unconscious aware of their conscious behavior, you know. Yes. And do our best to strengthen our restraint, and having the balance of being logical as well as emotional balance, you know. Yes. In doing so, I think that we could bring forth the best results in a very strategic way. You know, when it comes to chaos, you know, that's why we need an examinable strategist in order that we may learn from our spiritual experiences. You know, Anything that is in natural form and natural state is spiritual, you know. Um, the the natural progression of righteousness is to live a meaningful life, you know. Is to live a meaningful life. And even in the confusion, we need a healable theorist in order to help us to overcome our ignorant experiences. Ignorance is the result of hostility, as if there's nothing else to be learned, you know. What you think you know, you realize that you don't know, and there's more to be learned. So we got to decrease the hostility as opposed to increase the hostility when it comes to coming into complete civility. Then when we deal with ethics, we need a teachable material in order that we may learn from our generic experiences. What I mean generic experience, you go beyond race, class, gender, and religion, you know? Yes. For me, leadership is coordination. You know, you're looking for this, you know, this one individual, this hero, this model, this idol. It's just, which is not good. This is not good at all, you know. I believe it was the Ella Baker says, no strong people, you know. You know, strong people don't need, you know, strong leaders. I believe, paraphrasing what she says, you know, she was saying, you know, no strong leader, you know, no strong leader. You know, it's just the strong people. They are strong enough. They are united enough, and they are conscious enough. You know, to the point, to the fact that they are not driven by instinct. You know, that they are driven by logic, and they are consciously aware of that. And anytime you deal with any system, institutionalization of any form that is unjust or unjust, when it comes to race, class, gender, and religion, it is the not only the ideology, not only the philosophy, and associated with the psychology. You know, I can go with the sociology or what have you, ology, the study of. But it is a system. It is systemic. It's systemic. So the whole structure must be changed. It must be, as one would say, born again. Then we deal with customs. You know, customs. We need to facilitate a facilitatable memory, in order that we may learn from our social experiences. You know, social experiences. Yes. You know, because planet Earth is a sociological structure where there are inclusions and exclusions. You know, a wolf does not interact with a sheep should not interact with a wolf. You know, sheep should not interact with a wolf. What I'm reading for you is my moral code of conduct, or common humanity moral code of conduct. But, you know, culture, once again, you know, when in doubt of it, we need a communicatable idealist in order that we may learn from our everyday experiences. Yes. And then we got to deal with the law that govern, you know, this, when it comes to the conscious making the duty of the conscious to make the unconscious, to make the conscious conscious of their unconscious behavior. And coming into complete civility, and not to react and respond very instinctively, you know. We got to deal with the law of habit, you know, because everything in the universe operates in a habitual pattern, you know. Yes. Then we must come to learn to come to a point where we know that the consciousness and the manner and way in which we respond is in a habitual system, you know, habitually, because these repeat themselves, become habits. So, you know, you talk about being on automatic pilot to achieve your goals, you know, achieve your goals. Automatic pilot, yes, and be careful for anything that ignites or excites you. Yes, because some know that you, in the manner and way in which you're going to respond, is very instinctively, with being highly emotional, without any logic behind it. Yes. So then we can truly transform the tangling discourse of one's nation into a beauty sympathy of brotherhood. So I say this in closing, that there's the pledge of common humanity. There is no family without individual. The value of family and individual concerns. There is no community without family. The value of community concerns. There is no country without community. The value of country concerns. There is no environment without the spiritual wisdom of discipline that it brings. The value of environmental concerns. There is no joy without the happiness that it brings. The value of joy and happiness concerns. There will be no me without you. The value of me and you concerns. So this is the pledge. Talk to you.